What if Kaulig Racing's Shock the World driver announcement, according to Chris Rice, isn't actually just one driver? Alright, hear me out real quick. Kaulig Racing, obviously in years past, mainly last season, did a rotating cast through that number 16 car that they ran in the NASCAR Cup Series. They have a charter for it, but it didn't contend for the Drivers' Championship. It obviously contended for the Owners' Championship. Didn't make it. Obviously, they had a pretty mediocre run with that car. But what if they're planning on doing the same thing for the 31 car in 2024? They haven't actually signed one driver to drive the 31 car for the full season, but rather they've signed 3 drivers, maybe, to race that car full time, or on a partial schedule in 2024. And I honestly think that's maybe the path that they're going down. And you're probably wondering, who could they have signed to drive this car on a part-time basis? It's a good question. Austin Hill is the first name that comes to mind. Obviously, he's not doing a full season at Kaulig, which was rumored to be the case, where he was going to take over one of their 2 Cup Series cars in 2024. He obviously has some backing from his sponsors, but then supposedly at the last minute, he decided to stay at RCR for a long-term future, which likely involves a Cup Series ride down the road. But Kaulig Racing and RCR do have a very close partnership. I mean, they're even stationed out of RCR's Welcome, North Carolina campus. So it makes a lot of sense if Austin Hill does want some NASCAR Cup Series experience to do a partial schedule with Kaulig in that 31 car. They're guaranteed a starting spot because they have a charter. You don't have to pay for a full season, right? He can continue to race and contend for a championship with RCR in the Xfinity Series, but he can also get Cup experience as well if he does a partial deal. So I think that may be somebody that they have signed to do this, if they are taking this, multiple driver approach. Another name that makes total sense is Chandler Smith. He's already in-house at Kaulig. He's likely returning for another season of Xfinity with the team. And he's a guy that is already running select Cup races for them in that number 13 car that they run from time to time at Kaulig. Putting him in the 16 car, though, again, guarantees him a starting spot for however many races he wants to enter. He does bring some money along with him, so he could probably ask his parents and his backers to cut a check, right, and put him in there. And it gets him that Cup Series experience to move up full-time in 2025, because I think that it's still too early for him to move up full-time in 2024, and I think Kaulig agrees with that. But Chandler Smith does seem to be the guy that Kaulig potentially wants to build around going into the future. As long as it's not Ty Dillon and Daniel Hemrick, I think we're all fine with that. But at the same time, whatever. Chandler Smith, he is another name that could be part of this possible trio that they have rotating throughout the number 31 car. Now, the next name, and the name that you have heard before, he has Kaulig experience, and he's currently suspended by NASCAR, is Noah Gragson. So I have had somebody slide in my DMs and say, Noah to Kaulig that's happening. We'll see if it happens. It makes a ton of sense. There's some smoke around that. Where there's smoke, there's fire, right? Smokey the Bear taught us all that. Maybe that's what's going on. And if it is, then it makes a ton of sense. Obviously, Noah already has experience racing for Kaulig. Last year, in that number 16 car for select races, he has, 18 races under his belt? Or not 18. 20? How many races? It doesn't matter. He has enough races under his belt this year with Legacy Motor Club to have some Cup Series experience. I still think that Noah ends up at Kaulig on a full-time basis in the Xfinity Series. We'll see if that actually happens or not. But if it does, that leads credence to the fact that I think he'll end up in that 16 car on a partial schedule for the Cup Series in 2024. They're taking that Roush number 60 car approach to it. Just hopefully it has much better luck and they don't end up absolutely wrecking the team financially because they destroy the car so many times. Obviously, Kaulig has experience doing this in the past. They have a charter for it. They have to enter a car on a full-time basis. If they can't find a full-time driver for that ride, it makes sense to piecemeal together a schedule with these select drivers because they're able to bring budget, in a sense. Maybe they can't bring a full budget, right? But they can bring enough of a budget that can warrant putting them in this car for however many races, 12 races, 15 races, however much money each one of them brings. Then at the same time, they can still rotate AJ Allmendinger through if they want to on the road courses or anything like that. But Matt Kaulig, and I think Kaulig Racing in general, don't want to be funding these cars, self-funding them rather, with the Kaulig family of companies if they don't have to, right? Because that's just paying yourself. It's like when NASCAR and ISC do a deal. It's literally them just sliding an envelope across the table with their left hand and then sliding it back with their right hand. They're just paying themselves, and that doesn't make a ton of sense. I think that's what Kaulig wants to avoid with doing this, but having a rotating cast, again, makes a lot of sense. They can contend for an owner's championship if they do happen to win one of those races like AJ did in 2021 when he won at the Indianapolis Road Course for them. So people forget that Kaulig has a Cup Series win. So maybe, just maybe, that's the shock the world announcement that Chris Rice was going for. It's not one singular driver. They're not getting Carl Edwards out of Missouri, right? They're not convincing Scott Dixon to come over from IndyCar. That was never going to happen. But instead, they've managed to get this conglomerate of drivers. One that I think has really good potential in Austin Hill. Two that are maybes in Noah Gragson and Chandler Smith, and putting them together and seeing what they can do on a partial schedule for each of them in 2024. What happens with their other car, the 16, whether AJ returns or if they does get step down to the Xfinity Series and they fill that role with Daniel Hemrick or Ty Dillon. Maybe, right? There are guys that both have at least. Daniel has one full-time Cup Series season under his belt. Select starts obviously with Kaulig as well, and RCR before he went full-time. And then you have Ty Dillon, who has multiple full-time seasons under his belt. Has has not looked great over the last 2 seasons, but maybe it's a guy that can add some stability, right? Give him some feedback and do whatever from there. But yeah, Kaulig, rotating cast through the 31 or the 16, whatever number they actually end up going with, could be happening. So, like and subscribe to the channel. Follow me on TikTok @BreakHard, Instagram, Twitter, and Threads @BreakHardBlog.